Thank you so much, Anna. That was wonderful. And the ideas about burnout really resonate with me. I don't think it's for nothing that there's maybe 4 people my age in the audience here that most of us don't make it past our early 20s. Anyway, but also the other lovely thing about Paper Mountain, I think, is maybe uniquely in the country, is that it's, I think, spent a lot of effort crafting its identity, and I think that's been, really lovely to see. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that in terms of how all you guys have worked towards creating that. So it's got a particular flavour and feel to it. I think Shannon is the next speaker, Shannon Lyons. Shannon is an artist, I think, at least from my perspective, principally. Rather than an ARI runner. But I understand you run an ARI from your house, your apartment. And I think other important thing, you're not just an artist, you're an artist who works with spaces in their specificity, so how they're read as kind of cultural organisations and how they're experienced practically in terms of the physics or whatever. I'll let you speak about that.
Thank you very much. APPLECROSS, for those of you that have never come across it before, we are quite a relatively new ARI on the Perth scene, and we ran out of a flat that my partner and I moved into a couple of years ago in one of the southern suburbs of Perth, at the name APPLECROSS, hence where we got our name from. The flat is a 1960s flat, it's 1963, and it's the bottom front flat in an apartment complex of 10. So because of that, there are quite a number of restrictions that we have on the amount of people that we can invite to any given event, and that tends to indicate the kind of work that we like to provide to the Perth audience. So we're after works that provide quite intimate experiences of the space, and our primary aim is to provide a place to show the work of emerging artists and to promote conversation about contemporary art practice in an informal, lived-in environment. Generally, we showcase the work of young artists or artists within the first 5 years of their practice. And generally, it's artists who express an interest in site-orientated art practice. Both Dave Atwood, the other co-director, and I have a very, very deep interest in site-specific or situated art practice, and we both have active practices in those sorts of fields. So our shared passion for site-orientated artworks kind of led us to develop APPLECROSS in the first place, in the hope of extending opportunities to other artists in Perth who also might share our interest. I remember sitting in a cafe in Sydney while Dave and I were both in separate residencies at SNO, and we were kind of revelling in the fact that we had this amazing opportunity to spend time and space and to respond to it in kind and to the particular situation that it was situated in. And we kind of sat down with each other and said, wouldn't it be great if we could do something not dissimilar in Perth, but not run in a traditional sense of an ARI, where we have a standalone space that we both have to occupy or manage in some respect. What if we ran it out of our house? And we were both very gung-ho and quite excited by it. And we'd only just recently moved into the flat as well, so we were probably overly excited about the prospect. And that's kind of what that conversation led to us kind of starting APPLECROSS in the first place. And it led to us approaching the first bunch of artists that we asked to exhibit at APPLECROSS. So generally, we approach artists to exhibit at APPLECROSS who we feel would benefit from time spent actually making work on site or in situ. And we invite artists to engage with and respond to our living space in any way that they see fit. We don't alter the living space of our house at all in preparation for the exhibition. And we don't have any hard or fast rules about what artists can and can't do within reason. We have quite a relaxed tendency, so we're able to do lots of things that maybe you couldn't do in a normal house that you would be renting. The artists that we invite to show are able to take over as much or as little of the residential living space as they like, and the fact that we live on site means that artists can essentially take up residence in the space or are free to access the space whenever they like, for as long as they like, in the lead up to the exhibition. We tend to host one night only blink and you'll miss it affairs, and we do have quite a strict policy on invitations given that it is in a residential location. We ask each artist to develop a guest list, and we personally email each guest on that list an invitation to attend the exhibition, and we kind of manage the RSVPs for the artist. This This kind of raises for us the issue of exclusivity, which is something we've really grappled with over the last couple of years. We're quite conscious of the fact that we have quite a niche audience, and we don't necessarily see it as a problem, but we do see the fact that we don't really want our residential address to exist on Facebook for everyone and all, to be a bit of an issue. So having email invites is a little bit old school maybe, but we've found it a really good way of reaching the people that we need to reach without it becoming a crazy house party with lots of uninvited guests. We do have an active blog that allows for some of the documentation of each exhibition to be accessed by those not in attendance. And the blog allows for us to disseminate the work of the artists we show to a much wider audience than the bricks and mortar space would ever allow for. There have been occasions where we've shown the work of artists that aren't currently based in Perth. And our aim on these occasions is to allow for the artists to reconnect with the Perth art world and to share their experience of living and working elsewhere. The relaxed and intimate nature of the intimate live space is quite conducive to casual conversations, flowing between the artist and the guests invited. And this is something that both Dave and I have found to be really interesting and something that we hope to keep engendering at each APPLECROSS event. In terms of administration and money, Dave and I share all administrative responsibilities and all costs associated with running the art space. We don't charge artists to show, but we also don't provide any artist fee. And we sometimes ask them to bring along a case of beer, depending on, to the opening, depending on who the artist is and how much we know they like to drink. So, and it's always a BYO affair for everyone else as well. So we don't really have a lot of overheads other than the normal day-to-day running of a household, so we don't really see the need to charge anyone to show at APPLECROSS at the moment. So our influences, or people that have directly, or different spaces that have directly influenced what we do, given my own interest in site-specific practice in relation to art gallery spaces, I've been really, really excited by what Conical Inc. has done in Melbourne over the years. No longer running, but maybe in a different form currently. But the focus, of course, for that space was on site-specific projects within a fairly rigid gallery space that was standalone and for all intents and purposes white cube. So other spaces that have emerged over time have been the Museum of Natural History in Perth and Marrickville Garage in Sydney, who also have kind of standalone spaces, i.e. they were attached to a house, they're in a garage, but they're painted white. They operate as essentially a white cube space as well. Spaces that were slightly more conducive to our thinking and the ways that we wanted to operate were places like Austral Ave in Melbourne, which was run by Jane O'Neill for a couple of years, from 2005 to 2007. And O'Neill kind of gave over one of the rooms of a house that she had access to. It wasn't her own house, I believe. And ran kind of a series of site responsive projects out of that space. PS Art Space in Amsterdam has also been quite interesting. They clear out their apartment. It's headed up by Jan van der Ploeg, and he clears out his apartment for a weekend and invites an artist to show in that space. More recently, I suppose 2037 in Sydney and the Daphne collection in Perth have also proved to be influences for us. But both of these spaces don't necessarily have a site-specific focus, and that's something that we think APPLECROSS provides on the Perth ARI spectrum. So in terms of events, I'll just run you through a few different shows that we've had at APPLECROSS in the recent past. Kieran Broadhurst was the first artist to exhibit at APPLECROSS, and we're really, really excited to present Kieran's work as the initial kind of foray into our ARI experience, because we knew it would be quite dynamic and we knew that it would have some sort of participatory aspect. So we were guaranteed to get conversations flowing, basically, if Kieran was in the house, because he does like to talk. And he's a very good conversationalist. So he kind of knocked on the door and came into the space with Corinne Stoney, who's a lovely offsider. And in the kind of vein of a travelling salesman, or a door-to-door kind of Jehovah's Witness, knocking in the weekend on Saturday morning really early, came into the space and kind of conducted this creative experiment with the other individuals in the space. Gave us all the props that we had to hold, i.e. gold spray painted rocks, and made us make these hats out of tinfoil and sit for a while listening to him spiel on about mind control and being able to generate creatively an artwork through this sort of process of mediation that he was going to conduct with one of the participants of the exhibition. So one of the audience members was selected from the bunch, and she proceeded to kind of create this. She's in the room, I should probably ask her to respond, to create this artwork, creative activity in a kind of holistic and participatory fashion. The second event that we had was by a Perth artist, Tim Carter, and Tim had had a couple of years hiatus working at Pika by this point in time, away from his art practice, and we knew he was having a show at Paper Mountain and later on in the year, and we were really interested to see what he would do in APPLECROSS in the domestic space, because he has a very, very discrete interest in what happens in the everyday, particularly in his home environment, and in capturing that in some way. So essentially what Tim decided to do was to take on our whole house, which hadn't been done previously. Kieran kind of focused on the front room, and he made these very, very, very seductive responses to different phenomena and stimuli that he saw or witnessed while he was spending time in our space. Views outside of our window, things that were happening on the inside. I had roses on the table at the time that he was filming one day. And he set up these screens throughout the whole house in a way to kind of expand the idea of what a screen is in that home environment, which would generally exist in the lounge room or bedroom, but for all intents and purposes could operate anywhere now that we've all got iPhones and iPads and prop them up in bathrooms and watch different documentaries in the morning while you're getting ready. So he did kind of take over the entire house, including the bathroom and our bedroom, which was altogether a rather confronting moment for some of us, and had these really exquisite filmed experiences in the space. So the audience was able to roam around the whole house and kind of encounter these screens throughout their meandering. This is an example of one of the artists that we've brought from somewhere else to APPLECROSS. This is Mike Singe, who lived in Perth for a long, long time and recently moved, in 2011. He completed a Master's by research at the University of Tasmania and is now currently based in Hobart. So we were long admirers of Mike's work, and he had a long-standing relationship with Gallery Dusseldorf, which had closed, sadly. And we were interested in bringing Mike's work back to Western Australia to show to an audience that had probably not seen what he was currently working on before. So at the time, Mike was really interested in capturing his own breath in order to kind of present a mediation on what it might mean to make art about climate change. And he spent a period of 5 hours in our house responding to student emails, because he was a lecturer by that point at UniTas, and kind of doing general administrative duties, all the while capturing his breath in this huge balloon, which then had a projection of that production projected back onto it. Mike very kindly also offered on the night to give a bit of an oversight into his recent practice for those that were about. So he kind of had this very, very informal but quite informative artist talk, which I loosely call artist talk. More of a discussion about what he was up to between 2009, 2011, during his master's program, and that of course kind of ensured that lots of conversation occurred in the space about what he was up to. And it was kind of a way to break down that boundary between the artist and the rest of the guests, asking questions of him. The fourth show that we had was Ron Marsh, and Ron Marsh is an artist collective that's based in Perth, and Ron Marsh's show was essentially a meditation on what it means to be an adolescent, probably in Perth, adolescent male. So it included a lot of material to do with certain cultural or pop references, and it was called, my memory escapes me, Did You Call Moi a Dipshit, sorry. And they came up with a set of posters that were placed throughout the whole house, literally. Oops. and also had this quite amazing Glade air freshener, that's the one, dispersing links throughout the house. So the more time that you spent in the space, you kind of became overwhelmed by this hideous scent of misspent youth. But it was quite alluring at the same time, in a weird sort of way. The fifth exhibition was Carla Adams, who you all probably know, or most of you probably know. Carla came around for dinner a few times before her exhibition and took stock of what was on offer in the house and decided she was going to focus her attentions on our collection, rather mega collection of artworks by other people. So she had an exhibition called Reproductions, and essentially what happened was that Carla took some of the work with her, or asked kindly for the specs of the work, and then remade, remade some of the work that was in the house and represented it alongside the original artwork as a sort of meditation on this sort of satirical parody, and going some way to demystify the coveted and fetishised ideas to do with ownership of artworks. So the Bruce Slatter artwork and Carla Adams' take on Bruce Slatter. Imagine the top cover. And on the left, a Carla Adams version of both of which are incredibly exquisite. So, as you can see, the walls of our flat are not exactly smooth and pure and white. They're kind of roughly textured, a la 1960s Australian rendered, and they're scribbly gum in colour. Do you like scribbly gum? Last year we were kindly asked by Paper Mountain to take part in the Artist Run exhibition, and at the time Dave and I were going to be away, so we asked if they could look after our pot plants for the entire time that we were away, which actually was the entire time that the exhibition was running, and they did a remarkable job. Most of them came back in much better form than we let them in, so we're forever indebted to them for that. And that kind of set up for us the fact that we operate in a slightly different way to other ARIs in Perth, insofar as we have quite a flexible exhibition program. We like to work one-on-one with the artists and develop a kind of time schedule that works for them, so we don't have a monthly opening necessarily, or a bi-monthly opening. We kind of open whenever the artist is ready to exhibit work. And the convenience of this model of the ARI that Dave and I run is that it's mobile, and we're really interested in the fact that essentially the space can move around with us depending on where we end up over time. And if we end up relocating over east or overseas, or we move somewhere else in Perth, APPLECROSS can kind of exist in another form, in another way, wherever we end up being. This is one of the really exciting things about our model, and it allows a certain longevity without worrying about keeping a hold of or being able to fund a standalone gallery space. So primarily, APPLECROSS operates as a place where young artists can cut their teeth in a safe and convivial environment before exhibiting in other gallery spaces. From our own perspective, young artists in Perth only have a few places to show their work, and those that have a real interest in site specificity or site responsive practice have the added pressure of trying to find a space which provides a starting point for the work that they make. So we think that APPLECROSS kind of fills this niche. And I suppose at the end of the day, we see APPLECROSS as a motivator for those artists who find it hard to find a place to show. We want to demonstrate to them that you can do it yourself, and that you can take any opportunity that's going and make something of it. So this year we're just about to launch 2015's program of exhibitions, and we have a pretty exciting year coming up, if we do say so ourselves. This year we're focusing on expanding to include a curatorial project by Melissa McGrath, and projects that have been specifically generated with a focus on notions of home and domesticity, given the fact that we operate out of the house. We're really excited to have Emma Boswell, Emma Schrader, Marty Crocker, Liam Colgan, and Paige Alderdice lined up and ready to rock and roll for this year. And we're currently liaising with a couple of other artists about new projects for 2016 and beyond. So if you'd like to get in touch with us in any way, we can be found at our blog, or email us to pop yourself on the mailing list. Thanks very much.